Welcome to Trade Talk. I'm Andrew Gelfuso, Vice President of Trade at the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center. I'm here today with Her Excellency Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao, African Union Permanent Representative to the United States. Your Excellency, welcome to the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center. We also serve as the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C. I'm so pleased that you found some time in your schedule to come in and have a discussion with me today.
Thank you for having me.
To start off, could you tell our viewers what the African Union is?
Well, the African Union is a membership of all the 55 African countries, headed by all African heads of states. So the structure is that we have the African Union, and the members of the African Union are all the 55 African heads of state. And I like to capitalize on 55, because in many situations people talk of 54. January 2017, Morocco rejoined the Union. So now the African family is whole again. So we have the African Union, AU. And then we have the African Union Commission, which is the working organ of the AU that is headed by Chairman Musa Faki Mahamat. And then the African Union Commission has 6 representational offices, and I represent the Americas.
Now, in terms of the African Union mission to the United States that you represent and that you've been heading up for the past year, can you tell us what the mission of the embassy is here in D.C.?
Well, let's start by saying 1964, when our Pan-African leaders decided to undo the damage that was done by the Berlin Conference of 1885. Headed by Kwame Nkrumah, our leaders met and created the Organization of African Unity, or AU. During that meeting, Kwame Nkrumah proclaimed that Africa was for the Africans and that African Union was now, meaning then. Those words are as relevant now as they were back then. During that same meeting, Kwame Nkrumah also proclaimed that you were African because Africa is born in you. Our leaders met to undo the damage of the Berlin Conference. The realization that the Africa that we know today, with as many countries as we have today, some of them the smallest economies that clearly cannot survive on their own. That is a situation that cannot be sustained. Keeping in mind that our colonial masters divided us up like a piece of pie, divided the continent up like a piece of pie, the sole objective was to divide and conquer the Africans. The sole objective was to destroy the powerful kingdoms that they found on the continent with well-established religious and educational systems. The objective was to see to it that the continent was a dominated continent and the people were a defeated people. So that is what OAU was trying to undo. So 2002, OAU was renamed African Union. It was restructured and renamed African Union. The heads of states meet twice a year to discuss issues pivotal to the continent. One then begs the question, why is it that if our Pan-African leaders, 1964, recognized the need to undo the damage of the Berlin Conference, why is it that we are yet to attain that perfect African Union? The damage done by the Berlin Conference is deep. And you've heard of the legacy of colonialism. No amount of education can cleanse you of the colonial mentality. So trying to get the Africans to speak with one voice, because we know as clear as it is night and day that the African countries individually cannot survive, that our unity lies within us coming together as one continent and speaking with one voice. That is the goal of the African Union. The objective is to bring us together, make us whole again, so we, the children of Africa, can take our Africa to its rightful place on the world stage.
And we learn from the past to find our direction in the future and to speak to the present and the future. In 2015, the governments of the African Union adopted Agenda 2063 at the African Union Summit. What are that was a big statement. What are the specific goals and objectives of the agenda, and how is it going so far?
Well, the objectives, of course, we're talking about a peaceful and prosperous Africa, a continent that has its own economic development driven by its own people. Special emphasis is given to women and the youth. A peaceful continent that is free of any conflicts, a continent that is governed with respect to the good governance and rule of law, respect for human rights. And so they are basic pillars of any development of any community, of any nation.
Africa's population is young and growing, with a rapidly expanding number of job seekers entering the labor market, as you know. How can the current generation of leaders pave the way for the next generation of entrepreneurs?
Well, you witnessed last month the signing of the Continental Free Trade Area. When you look at it from a very simplistic point of view, if we were to just open up the borders, eradicate those borders and allow a woman who's selling her wares from Botswana to freely cross over into Zimbabwe or Zambia, that alone would create tremendous jobs. So the signing of the CFTA, we are looking forward to have a robust African continental economy with millions of jobs created, but along the way also open the way for outside investors to come in a more seamless way. The biggest problem that we used to have, the biggest complaint, is companies complaining about how difficult it is to do business in Africa, how you have to go from one country to the other, and if you are going to go into 6 countries, you need to get 6 visas from the 6 different countries. We're trying to streamline all that and allow businesses within the continent to thrive, free movement of people within the continent, but at the same time also pave the way for easy access to investing in Africa by our allies around the globe.
China has taken great initiative with trade and investment in Africa. Their increased trade and investment has boosted the continent's growth, and cooperation has really benefited both sides. How does the United States best compete with trade and development on the continent?
Well, I have to say, they may not be able to compete with China when it comes to the financial muscle that China is bringing to the continent, but I do know for a fact that when it comes to the American private sector and what that sector brings to the table, it's second to none. So no country in the world could compete with the United States in terms of what the Americans, through the private sector, can bring to the continent.
What role has the African and African American diaspora played in the burgeoning growth on the continent?
We are playing some role, but nowhere near what we need to be doing. Keep in mind, the biggest problem Africa has now is the lack of capacity. That capacity for Africa is in the diaspora. Through the brain drain, Africa has lost a lot. There are more Ghanaian doctors in New York City alone than there are in the whole country of Ghana. The same is true with Nigeria. It really is a situation that cannot be sustained. The African Union is acutely aware of that, which is why they realize that there cannot be sustainable development in Africa without significant participation of its diaspora.
Agriculture is very important for Africa's economic stability, as it is for most regions in the world. Farming is the primary source of food income and provides over 60% of all jobs on the continent. Can you talk about specific policies that will help growth for farmers?
You know, we're the continent with over 65% of arable land on earth. And I think it's unfortunate that some countries, too many countries in Africa, are importing food. That is something that is absolutely unacceptable. The leadership at the African Union level recognizes that at a certain level, it's almost embarrassing to think that we, the Africans, of all people on earth, are importing food. So we realize that of all the assets that we have, above the mineral wealth, the land is where it begins. And it is the land that naturally our people, that is our form of wealth that we have known from time immemorial. And so we also realize that by and large, a lot of African countries, the growth of the economy is going to be led through agriculture. So a well-implemented, orchestrated agricultural program in every country is a must, and it is at the top of the agenda of the African Union.
Could that lead to a strong export sector as well?
Absolutely. See, we would like to believe that the continent can be the breadbasket of the world.
Our final question is on global health. Some of the world's highest maternal mortality rates come from African countries, and the need for overall improved health systems is evident on the continent. What are your goals specifically for health and development in Africa?
Health and development in Africa is a serious challenge. Let me give you a simple example. If all the continental African doctors were to go back to Africa today, we are only going to meet 15 to 20% of the need. So no amount of money put into healthcare by any government is going to give us the desired outcome. What's needed is capacity building. So a program needs to be put in place to aggressively build that capacity through training. We have actually started a program that we are implementing from the African Union mission here in Washington, D.C. The President of Zambia has stepped up to the plate and given us 132 acres of land. We're going to be building our own Wakanda Village. On that village, there's going to be a 1,000-bed hospital, which is a teaching hospital, and we're going to be affiliated to Mulungushi University. And so out of that, we're going to be training all the necessary specialists needed, not only in Zambia, but for the region. This will be a center of excellence for the region. The plan is to build 5 such villages, 1 in each region, specifically to repatriate the African diaspora, for they're going to be the ones who are going to be the instructors, the professors, the doctors who are going to embark on this aggressive, much needed capacity building program.
Your Excellency, thank you for being so generous with your time. I've learned a lot. I hope our viewers have. I'm excited to see what's coming next between our two countries in terms of trade, health, and mutual cooperation. I hope to see you again soon in the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center.
Well, let me say this. Thank you for having me. And I can tell you I'm a woman on a mission. Chairman Faki sent me here to see to it that the relationship between the United States and America is the best that it has ever been, that the bridges that link us are stronger than they can ever be. So I'm counting on the Americans to also come to the table to join the Africans as equals together in building the Africa that is prosperous and beneficial to both of us.
Thank you, and we very much look forward to working with you as a strong partner to support your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency.